Clemente, a former FBI agent and counterterrorism expert who's conducted counterterrorism investigations in North and South America, the Middle East, and Africa. He's currently president of Mission Integrated Technologies. Thanks for joining us, Tim. Look, Attorney General Eric Holder says, quote, "It's a dangerous time." Do you agree?
Absolutely, no question. Or ISIS, Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. The situation there is that you have very, very well-trained and hardened fighters with incredible hardware. And now to take that technology and that know-how and to expand it around the Western world with the capabilities that AQAP are adding to the picture, which is, you know...
And Tim, let me ask you, I mean, there's still a lot of questions, and they're saying, oh, we can't tell you exactly what this online job is because of his security, quote unquote, but a job working for a major online company in Russia. For real?
Well, you know, I think, Aaron, the problem with that is that who knows whether this is just a cover for the Russian government or if this is their version of the NSA that's operating through this internet site. I mean, the fact is that whether or not he reveals secrets to that group overtly, he can still reveal a lot of intelligence about our intelligence capabilities. And it's, if you remember the scene from the movie Argo, where they find the shredded documents, and one by one, those pieces of paper are literally useless. But when you build that puzzle and put it back together, there's a lot of intelligence. And so a guy like Edward Snowden could leach out a lot of...
Lone wolf, homegrown attacks. Is this, in your view, the real future of al-Qaeda terrorism?
I believe it's been the past and the future of al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda has never been about regimented attacks, although they have planned long-term planning for attacks like September 11th. That's not the norm for them. The norm for them is radicalizing individuals and getting those individuals to come up with plots on their own. The 9/11...
Tim, we're almost out of time, so briefly, do you think that that's the right approach, relying on the Muslim community?
I think we do need to rely on the Muslim community. I would have to agree with the president somewhat in what he just said, because without the Muslims, they're the first responders to this. They're the ones that are immediately see radicalization, and unfortunately, they haven't responded to it within their community yet. They're beginning to, I believe, and I believe that's what's going to be required for us to really stifle this ideology from growing.
Yeah, I agree as well. Tim, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Terrorists. Is that true? Is this flight ban a prize to terrorists, or is it foolhardy for commercial planes to be flying in this area?
I would say it's both, Aaron, because, I mean, what is the objective of terrorists? It's to incite terror in people, to inflict that horror in human beings, to cause them to alter their path of life. And when half of the civilians, or two-thirds of the civilians in Israel are now in bomb shelters, I think they've had that effect. And doing this to commercial flights is just a further effect, when they're affecting people outside the population of Israel now. But at the same token, it's no different than lobbing a hand grenade. When they launch these rockets into Israel, they don't have the precision of precision-guided bombs like, you know, Western powers do. And so one of these things could drop anywhere. And even with the Iron Dome defense, that doesn't evaporate these explosives that are on the warhead of these rockets. It just causes that to possibly be diverted, and you can still hit a plane. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut, and these rockets can certainly find their target, even if it's not the intended target.
And General about this. Joining us is Tim Clemente. He's a former FBI counter-terror investigator and special agent and friend of ours here at the table. Tim, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me, Buck.
Tim, one thing is that, Tim, it seems like they're trying to get people to almost to immigrate to the Islamic State. They're getting people to try to show up to become a part of this jihadist society. That seems to be unusual for what we've seen recently in the Middle East, but it's also a harbinger of things to come, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, Buck. And it's not really that unusual to be recruiting like this. I mean, if we look back at Al-Qaeda and other groups around the world, Islamic extremist groups. I mean, Al-Qaeda had Adam Gaddan, who was raised as a Christian homeschooled kid in Oregon and California and became a mouthpiece for Osama bin Laden. You have Anwar al-Awlaki, who, you know, grew up in New Mexico and then lived here in Northern Virginia at a mosque not far from where I live. And others, Hamami and out of Al-Shabaab in Somalia, who grew up in the United States, in Alabama of all places. So they're not doing this because they want to be equal opportunity employers. They're doing this because this is a force multiplier, getting the Western world involved in the jihad. Typically it's been a problem in the Arab world, in the Middle East, in poorer third world countries. But when you start bringing in Westerners, especially a normal Canadian kid like this Poulan kid, I mean, most of them end up taking long dirt naps in the end, but it's still a recruiting tool because then they're martyrs like this guy. And what they're doing is, the force multiplication isn't just the fighters. And that's what makes this really dangerous, because You get somebody
of Ambassador Stevens in the consulate. Is that allegation fair? If we had handled this differently, would the FBI really have been in there before? Would it have made a difference?
Well, Aaron, I happened to be on the FBI squad for almost 10 years that was responsible for the Middle East and Africa. And we deployed typically, even if we didn't have country clearance, we were wheels up and we were on our way there. And sometimes we'd get the clearances upon arrival. And you know, the USS Cole in Yemen is a perfect example. In October of 2000, we were wheels up within several hours of that bomb going off, and we landed in Aden, Yemen, to take the dead and wounded off the ship and to do our investigation. And the same thing when the U.S. embassies were blown up in 1998 in Kenya and Tanzania. FBI agents were deployed immediately. So I don't understand how our State Department, immediately after this attack, isn't communicating to the officials in Libya that we need to send an investigative team in there. You would think, because it's on American soil, even though it's a special mission, I believe that's still American soil by our standards, and they're American citizens that are injured and killed. Ordinarily, the FBI would be.
The FBI gets involved in this investigation. What are some of the things that they're going to be looking into?
Well, obviously, they're going to, besides collecting all the physical evidence and trying to build the federal case against Ciancia, they're going to be looking at his mental status and what his associations were. Is this, you know, is he part of an organization that may have led him to do this? It doesn't appear that way. It appears like he's a lone gunman, probably mission-oriented in nature, which means that he's on a task and he believes that he's doing something to either rid society of some ill or correct some misdeed that was done to him. Typically, these mass shooters are in the age range that he fits right in, late teens into their 20s, which is a period of time where a lot of personality disorders can exhibit themselves. And he made a
process. How does an investigation like this one work?
Well, it branches out like a spider web. It's going to go out in many directions. As you just discussed earlier about the videos, something that's new in the last decade or so is the onset of every human being being able to record digital video, literally everyone that's out there. So that increases the amount of evidence that the FBI and other investigators have to pour through. If you think back to 15, 16 years ago at the Atlanta bombing at the Olympics, you know, there was very, very little video evidence that was available. Some security cameras, and that was about it. So it was much tougher, first of all, to find and identify a suspect.
On September 11th, when he opened a cultural center and met with officials.
The Ambassador Stevens had met with a Turkish official in the special mission compound, the consulate there in Benghazi, and everything was quiet for them.
That all changed when darkness fell. At 9:42 p.m., gunfire is heard outside the Benghazi consulate. Then, a loud explosion. Within minutes, dozens of armed militia charged the main gate, setting fire to the barracks, headed straight for the ambassador's residence. By 10 p.m., Ambassador Stevens, Information Officer Sean Smith, and a security agent run to a safe room.
3 men with guns against 120 with RPGs, machine guns, grenades. They would have been no match.
An alert is sent to the CIA security team at an annex about a